So today I'm going to show y'all a quick shoot that I did, and I'm calling it Starfish, Sand Dollars, and Seashells. And I set up on one of my desks, and you can see I'm on my tripod with my EOS R, and I have my Tamron 90mm macro lens on it. The seashells I got from, I think it was Hobby Lobby. It may have been Michael's. It was Hobby Lobby. You can also get them online. And the container that I'm going to be using, that plastic container there, I got from the dollar store for $3. The divider there that I'm using to separate the different types of shells, that's how I store them, I got from the dollar store for $1. And they're in the party section. It's for chips and dips and things like that. And I'm going to be using some water that's there in that tea container, and that a little LED light that's in the top right that is on a little mini tripod. So I start off by taking the container, setting it up on wooden blocks, and I added some of the seashell chips, which have been tumbled so there's no rough edges. And then I go ahead and I start composing my image. And so put the little chips on the bottom, then added the various seashells that I had, then added some sand dollars with a starfish on the top, and then started getting ready to shoot. I use an Ultra Pro tripod, which allows me to take the middle section and put it right over my object, which is really pretty cool. And so this is how I started. We're going to try different f-stops and see what we get. And I also, that water that was in that tea container, I added to the seashells just to kind of give them a little bit of glitter. I wanted my goal is to make a shot where it looks like I was walking along a beach late afternoon, and I came across this beautiful composition of this starfish and all these various shells. So I start off by shooting 3.5 and focusing on the starfish, and of course everything's pretty bright. Oh, I'm shooting an aperture priority in this case. Normally I shoot full manual, but for this demonstration I wanted to shoot an aperture priority. So that's 3.5. So obviously the starfish is nice and crisp and everything else is soft, which is normally kind of how I shoot, but we're going to play around and we're going to really stop things down and see what we get. When you're shooting something like this, like still life or macros or what have you, move your light around. I also move the container around because I wanted to get different looks, different compositions that I shot. So now I have the light coming from the side to kind of rake across the scene. And this time I'm shooting at f11, and this is what I got. So it's similar to the first scene. Now some of the shells are more in focus. You can see that one on the right. It's a little more in focus. And again, even when you're when you're stopping down at f11 or even f22 or higher, when you shoot macro and close up, your depth of field is still going to be very, very narrow, even when you stop down like this, to f11. So then I changed my composition. I wanted a little more color, so I added that kind of purplish shell there. And this is the shot. I like this. I kind of lost the blue of the water or the blue of the napkin in the back, but I like this, except the starfish. I focused on the the starfish, but the sand dollar really is the one that stood out in this, but still not what I want. So I wanted to try. It's always fun to do things like this. When you use something that's clear plastic or glass, or you can always, I have a light table, but in this case I just used my little LED light and I put it under the shells to see what I'd get. So I set it up at f11, and that's what I got. Little bright, but that's pretty cool looking. It almost has a glow to it with that light underneath it. Continued on. I keep moving around my composition, which is, I would suggest change your composition, move your angle, move your lights until you get something that you really like. So here's another shot, f11. That's what I got. Starfish is really in sharp, crisp focus. Then changed up things again, moved the light up, kind of a rake, but the main thing was I changed the composition, f11, and got that shot. And I really like that shot. So the last thing I did, I took away the LED and I just used the light from the window. By now it's getting a little bit later in the afternoon. It's about 3 or 4. The sun's kind of going down a little bit. I wanted to see what I'd get. Set it up. Shot this one at f5 to see if that would make much difference. And that's what I got. And that's a pretty cool shot. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you which shot I chose to use as my main shot and how I post-process it, say that quick, post-processed it or edit it in Lightroom. Okay, so we've captured all the images. I'm going to go through real quick and see which one that I like. That's pretty cool. Yeah, that's neat, but doesn't tell the story I want it to tell. That's pretty neat. I like that one, but that's a little soft. That one's pretty cool. A little dark, we can fix that. And this is the last one. The only thing about this one is the light that was coming through those, through my windows. This is from, these light streaks are from the curtains that I was using to diffuse them. I should have seen that when I was shooting, but I didn't. And this one. Now this one's really neat looking. It looks like it's on a light table because I had that little LED light underneath it. It's a bit bright. And I can fix that, but I usually shoot, oh, here's one more. That's pretty neat. I usually shoot at least a half a stop to a full stop under. And the reason I do that when I shoot in manual, now all of this was shot in aperture priority, so I didn't have quite the control that I normally like. I think I'm going to play with this one. Because when you shoot a half stop to a full stop underneath, when you can always pull out and extract information when you shoot in raw from the shadows. It's really hard to do it when when it's overexposed and you have blown out areas, because when it gets white like that, there's really not much information, if you will, in those whites. So we're going to pick this one. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is get rid of this. We're going to go into develop. Now I shot it just on auto white balance, so I'm going to change it to auto, and it made it a little bit cooler, a little bit bluer. And then I'm going to go let's see, just for giggles, let's see what auto does. It's really brighter than I want. I want more contrast. I'm going to reset. Go back to auto. And actually, let's see what it looks like here if I play with this. Daylight, it's going to warm it up. That's too warm. Cloudy is way warm. Still too warm. Wow, that's blue. That's not bad. Not what I want. Custom, I could go in, I can pick. That's actually not bad there. Okay, well, we're going to run with that for right now. So the first thing I want to do is, you can see when I shot, and usually too when you shoot, try to, my subject is of course the sand dollar, and then it's supporting subjects, which are the shells here and the starfish. But you try to shoot, when you're shooting, try to give yourself enough room so that when you go into processing, you can go to crop, and we're going to get rid of the ugly side of that plastic container, although it served us well. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little more of the rule of thirds, I think. I don't want to cut this starfish's little foot off. But I'd like to have the sand dollar a little more anchored in bottom left. Somewhere in there. I could even crop tighter. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, that's pretty cool. Okay, so the first thing I do is I'm going to go into my masking. And I'm going to ask it to, let's see what it does with subject. Okay, it selected these two. Now, and the overlay that I use is this bright magenta, because there's not much that I shoot that is that color. So if we take it off, Let's see. Let me, I'm going to add to this, and I'm going to do the brush. And I'm going to add, whoops, I need to add brush. Okay. Oh, I took off my overlay. There we go. So, and now I move my overlay. So I'm going to add, I'm going to bring out a little more details in the starfish here. Okay. All right. And the overall picture is pretty dark, which is actually kind of what I wanted. So the first thing I'm going to do, since I have these three things selected, I'm going to go in and pump up the highlights a little bit. And I'm going to bring down the shadows, a little more contrast. Just a little bit. And I'm also, since this is not a person, I'm going to increase the texture. And I'm going to increase the clarity. Now, clarity is a really cool thing. You have to be a little careful with it. It does really darken the dark areas in your photo. And let's see a before and after by hitting. Okay, let's get rid of that. There we go. So you can see that it changed. So of course the temperature changed. It really popped out the starfish, which I really like. It really popped out that sand dollar. This little shell here, which is not totally in focus, if you look, the top of it didn't quite make it. This is actually more, even though it's soft too. So I may, let's see here. Let's go back. Let's not decrease tint. Let's go back to fit. So I think what I'm going to do, hit the Y again, is I'm going to try to lighten this up and maybe add a little texture, because I kind of want these, even though I shot at f11, as you know, with macro and close-up, when you're shooting something with that's macro or close-up, even at f11, you're still not going to have much depth of field. So let's go back to the mask. I'm going to create a new mask. I'm going to do brush, and we'll see if I can't lighten up the inside of the shell a little bit. And there it comes. Open up the highlights and a little bit of contrast. And now while I have this brush selected, let's go in and see if we can lighten this up. That's a little too bright for that one. So I'm going to hit subtract, brush. We'll do it on its separate. All right, so let's create a new mask. Brush. You can do objects too. When you have this many objects, so sometimes it's hard for Lightroom to figure out what exactly it is that you want, as you saw. Okay, so now we're on the shell. Increase the exposure a little bit. And let's go in and do a little more texture, a little more clarity. Okay, so that's looking pretty cool. Let's go back to our first mask. And let's see here. Let's bump it just a little bit. There we go. Okay, so I'm kind of digging that. Now, what I'd like to do is this blue is, well, I don't know. The blue's pretty. Let's go into the coloring, just see what we can do with it. Okay, now you see how everything, this is showing, since I have my show overlay, take it off. Some of the stuff I don't want to mess, I want to pick up the shell and things like that. So you can go into this little part here that says refine and back it off just a little bit. So now it's only picking up that blue and it's leaving the shells and such alone. And we're going to go in, maybe make it a little bit bluer, just a hair. And also, let's see here. I don't want it to be the star of the show, so I might make it, let me take out the contrast a little. I just kind of want it to be suggestive. Okay. So that's kind of cool. So again, we'll go before and after. You can really see how the starfish really pops out here, as well as the sand dollar. So I'm really kind of digging that. And this shell now is not quite so lost. And this little shell is starting to play a little bit. So I see a few things that I want to fix. One of the things is I can't stand when you're shooting and you go in. Let's see here. Let me zoom in just a little bit. So when you're doing something like this, especially once you start editing, whoops, wrong one. If you see things like this, like these artifacts, I'm using Content Aware, which does a pretty good job, as you can see. And you want to get out all these little distracting things, especially on a macro, because you're so close to it. There's a few more spots. There's one there. Let's see here. Starfish looks pretty darn good. There's some spots there. So we'll hit that. Just little tiny things. Didn't quite get rid of that one. There we go. A few little spots on that thing, not too bad. This is our star. This is the main one that I want to clean up. Okay. Fit? Okay. So I'm liking it. Now, since I wanted it to look like we're basically walking along the beach, and our light source was that little LED light coming from over here. I did have it on a warm setting, but I might want to warm this side up, so that's where it looks like the light's coming from. We did get the ambient light from that window with that diffused curtain over it, so it's lighting up the edges of this very nicely and the edges of the starfish. But let's go in and add a linear gradient on this end, just up in there, just so it's kind of kissing. It'll go from the whatever color I tell it to transparent, and I want to warm it up, kind of like we're on the beach. There we go. That looks more like it's late afternoon. And instead of sitting on a table in my studio, just want to warm it up a little bit. And then I also want to go over here and add a gradient, and I want to do that same thing, linear gradient, and we're going to lower the exposure on this gradient like kind of like that. Now this gradient here, that got a little too white, so let's go back to that one and maybe pull it back just a little bit. Okay. So we still have the nice, a little bit of a warm glow. It looks like we're, it's late afternoon. We've darkened this because we want these objects to be, this is our object and our focal point, and these are all the supporting objects. So one of the last things that I do also is I go down to, oops, I'm in the wrong thing here. I go down, I'm going to sharpen the whole thing just a little bit. And I'm going to also go down to vignetting, and I always add a little bit of vignette. It's probably a little much, just so you can barely see it. And let's do the before and after. There's before. It's nice. It's not too bad. I'm still not happy with this yellow in there, so I'm going to go in and kind of fix that. But now the sand dollar really pops. The starfish really pops. These guys are doing a better supporting role. We've got the ugly black mark, whatever that was, off of that shell. I may even go and highlight a little bit of this, get rid of a little bit of this yellow, and then I think it'll be done. So let me create a new mask brush. Let me go in, add a little bit of highlight here, and a little bit of exposure. Maybe even give it a little bit of a yellow glow. There we go. That now it's looking like an afternoon sun. And let's go to this gradient. We're down here. Hit subtract, brush. These shells came out too yellow. Let me show my overlay here. So let's take this, some of this out. And let me adjust how much. My density was down to 57, that's why. Crank it up a little bit. There we go. Okay, I want that yellow, but not quite so much on that shot. Much better. All right, so I really liked how that added that. So I think I'm going to add to that. I'll go back to that mask. I'm going to add with a brush. I think I'm going to add a little bit here and there, those highlights. Whoops, way too much. Command Z, get rid of that. Get rid of that. Way too much. Okay. Let's do its own mask. Brush. All right. And let's tell it what we want to add. This is the fun part of editing. You can make this. You can make your pictures look like however you want them to look. So we're gonna add. I'm gonna add a little bit of an afternoon glow to some of this. Probably adding too much, but let's see here. All right, let's see what an afternoon glow looks like. Oh, that's way too much shade. One of the things too when you're editing, go way too far. You go, whoa, wow, that ain't working, and then you just back off until you get it just like you want it. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. Let's look at the before and after. That's pretty cool looking, but that really pops out everything that was in that image. So we go in closer. You see how it sharpened up that sand dollar? We got rid of the bad stuff in that sand dollar, and look at what it did to that starfish. So that's really, really neat. Let me go back to fit. And there you go. So Y again to go back to the screen, and there is your finished image. And all I have to do now is export it, put my my little signature logo on the bottom of it, and that's a done portrait or a done photo. And I may end up hanging it on my wall.